and welcome back. It is now time for our scripture lesson, and my scripture today is 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. Now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant did fear the Lord. And the creditor has come to take my 2 sons to be his bondmen." And Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what have you in the house?" And she said, "Your handmaid has nothing in the house except a pot of oil." Then he said to her, "Go, borrow for yourself vessels from the houses of all of your neighbors, even empty vessels. Borrow not a few. And then go in and shut the door upon you and upon your sons, and pour out into all these vessels, and the vessel which is full bring to me." So she went from him and entered her house, and shut the door upon herself and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And when the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me more vessels." But her son said to her, "There are no more vessels," and the oil stopped. Then she came and told the prophet of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt and live, you and your sons, on what is left over." Thus ends the reading of our scripture, 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. When I spoke last month, I mentioned that I wanted to get back to basics. And I spoke about 2 of our natural laws. One of them, the law of balance. The spiritual and physical laws, these spiritual and physical laws are intended to bring good, orderly direction to our progression on this earth plane. And we discussed learning how we can work with these laws to create a joyous and fulfilling life. Today, I'm speaking about the law of attraction and the law of abundance, and how we can live a prosperous life by exercising self-discipline. In today's scripture, the widow was in desperate need. Her husband, who was the family provider, was dead, and the creditor was knocking at her door. She didn't know where to turn, and she cried to Elisha for help, like we so often do. "God, help me. God, what am I going to do?" To better understand this scripture, we want to first look at who or what Elisha represents. Metaphysically, Elisha represents the spiritual I am of the widow. It represents her I am consciousness, not someone outside of herself, but rather an aspect of herself. The widow was pleading to Elisha for help. And that plea for help is not only appealing to the capital G-O-D, but it is also pleading to the small g, to that small g within her. The change first had to come from within her. Interestingly, the widow symbolizes that state of consciousness where we feel Notice I said feel, not that we are, because we are never, but where we feel we are disconnected from the source of God. And when we are in this frame of mind, we think we are on our own and we don't know where to turn. Sometimes we look to the outside world as our source, perhaps our spouse, employer, or a close friend. And yes, they can help us get on track and they can help us in the short term. But the true and the everlasting source is God. And the source of God is infinite. It continually replenishes us. The I am consciousness asked the widow, "What can I do for you? Tell me what you have." Now we begin the process of digging deep within for our answers and solutions. The widow responds, she has nothing in the house but a pot of oil. And this oil represents the oil of life. It represents the vital fluid that flows through us. The widow is then instructed to get all the vessels that she can. And she was instructed to get as many as possible. She is expanding her consciousness. She is now opening up the valve to the flow of her own life force to create her abundance. When we are in harmony with the law of abundance, we want to visualize it as an unlimited source. Because when we are connected to God, it truly is an unlimited and infinite supply. She was then told to shut the door. Does this perhaps sound familiar? To shut the door to the outer world and to take her sons and go within, into the secret chamber of the Most High of her meditation. This is the process of aligning ourselves with divine mind, aligning ourselves with the source. When the widow turned within and connected herself with God, she found the valve to the flow of her abundance was right within her own dwelling. She then filled every vessel that she had, and the oil didn't stop until there were no more vessels to fill. Her abundance flowed endlessly until she had no more capacity to accept any more. The law of abundance intertwines with the law of attraction. The law of attraction teaches us that what we think is what we'll attract. Scripture teaches us, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Simply put, we are what we think. If we can think it, we can be it. And what we think is what we will attract to us. A thought is that spark that ignites the process to begin creating. And once we release that thought, once we think it, whether consciously or unconsciously, the universe and our subconscious mind begin to react. They are those little worker bees that are just ready and willing to start creating what we think. And when the widow believed, she could manifest what she needed. Her situation changed. She chose to replace the lack she perceived with abundance so she could provide for her family. The I am consciousness planted the seed or the thought in her mind to gather all the pots that she could. And in so doing, she was changing the way she was thinking to accept the divine flow from God. And we want to be mindful of what we think so that we draw to us and create what we want rather than what we don't want. You see, the law does not discriminate between what is and what is not for our highest and greatest good. Only we can do that. That means if we are thinking lack, well, that's what we're going to attract. We're going to attract lack. If we are envisioning the worst case scenario, that's what we're going to draw to us. If we don't like the outcome, we have to change the way we think. Self-discipline plays an important role when we are working with these natural laws. We want to be mindful and we want to be in control of our thoughts. Consciously creating the world we want to live in. And in so doing, attracting what we want. And it is a process. Because when that mind starts to go off course, we want to be mindful to steer it back, because it's going to happen. Some of you, excuse me, may have heard me refer to the broken record syndrome. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. But for those who remember the days before digital music, we used to play records on a turntable. He's laughing at me. On a turntable with an arm and a needle. And if you remember, if there was a scratch on the record, the same verse would play over and over and over again until you finally got up, excuse me, picked up that needle and had to move it past the scratch. Now I know I'm going way back for some of you. Well, same applies to our thoughts. This is something that I do. When my mind is going places that I really don't want to go, and why is it? Those thoughts that we don't want to think, they just won't stop. What I do is I envision moving a needle in my mind to another thought. I move it past that. Choosing a thought that is more pleasing and hopefully more productive. And I tell myself, I don't want to think this anymore. And I have to work at it and catch myself. Because if I don't, that monkey mind will just wander away. We also have to be disciplined to stay the course and not give up. So often when we start a new adventure, we're all excited and we pour all of our energy into it. It's like the start of the new year. On January 2nd, the gym is packed with New Year's resolutioners. After feasting on the Thanksgiving turkey, the holiday cookies and fudge, and drinking the New Year champagne, their New Year resolution is to get back into shape and lose those extra pounds. They're all charged up. They go out and they have to buy new gym clothes and new sneakers because, we got to look good while we're doing it. And that first week, they're at the gym and they're there every day. Then the second week, maybe 2 to 3 times. And you got it. By the end of the month, the sneakers are back in the closet collecting dust. How do we maintain the momentum to see it through completion and beyond? That's where self-discipline comes in. We want to continually reinforce our goals, keep the fire stoked, perhaps through tools such as daily I am affirmations and claiming it. I am, ... Fill in the blanks with whatever you want to create. And continually add wood to this fire so it doesn't go out. And the more energy we put into it, the greatest chance it has of manifesting. And remain in the divine flow and stay focused. I made up my mind 2 months ago that it was time for me to shed some excess weight for my health. And the first week, I lost 5 pounds and I was so ecstatic. It's like, oh, I can do this. But then the pounds didn't come off so easy. I was working harder and harder and eating less and less. And I get on the scale and I lost 1 pound. And I started to get a little discouraged. And I thought, why am I working this hard just to lose a pound? I can go back to the way I ate and not feel deprived. You see, when the progress doesn't come as quickly as we would like it to, it's easy to lose interest or abandon our goals. By the way, I did stay the course. I'm still working towards it. But, you know, we live in this society. We call it the microwave society. We want everything in 2 minutes. If we don't get it in 2 minutes, well, then forget it. That's the point where we have to be disciplined to stay the course. Some goals may be short-term, but others, they take a little bit longer and they're long-term goals. Like our spiritual path. The path to self and God realization, it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime commitment. Being disciplined to stay the course and making a commitment that we will feed our soul every day through meditation and by connecting ourselves to the source, thinking positively and using our mind constructively. We live in the flow of life when we awaken the I am consciousness, and when we acknowledge and recognize that we are always connected to the source of our abundance. We are always connected to God. All we may need will be provided. It starts with a single thought. And being mindful, being the master of our thoughts. Then exercising self-discipline and staying the course. In closing, I want to share a quote by Arthur Ward. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. Many blessings. Namaste.